Why South Sudan? An Every Village podcast where we answer questions about the world's youngest nation. The question of the day is why water? Hello everyone, my name is Tiana Johnston and I am the host of this podcast called Why South Sudan. I have Andrew Brown, Executive Director of Every Village, here with me again.
It's awesome to be with you, Tiana.
It's fun to have you on here. All right, so I have a fun question for you. Okay, I want you to share with me your two favorite places that you've ever lived.
Okay, well, I will tell people, unfortunately, I'm not a Texan, although I choose to be a Texan, but I was born in Pennsylvania and spent the first few years of my life moving around a bit. Lived in D.C., lived in Detroit before settling in North Texas, and then finally moving down to Houston when I was about 11, I think. And so I definitely count Houston as home. So I love Houston, but specific to, places, and then even within Houston, I've moved a lot of places in Houston. But I'll say my first favorite place I lived was my first apartment with my wife when we got married. We lived in Sugar Land, which is southwest Houston, and it was a tiny little apartment, but we were right by the kind of the clubhouse where there was a water fountain, and I just loved the sound of water fountains, and we could hear that from our room, and there was not a lot of space, and so it was just nice. I don't know, it was just simple living. Anyway, I just have a lot of fond memories for that. So that was a fun time and place to live. And then, but definitely probably my favorite place I've lived is Kampala, Uganda. Our family moved there in 2015 with Every Village and lived there for a couple years. And I just love everything about that. I don't know. It's a beautiful place. Kampala is built on 7 hills, and I'm from Houston. So Houston is as flat as dirt, right? So in 2 years, I never got tired of the views, just being on hills, looking out and seeing Lake Victoria, or seeing just, the charcoal smoke from another area, or seeing the downtown. I don't know. I loved that. I love the culture. It's such a warm and friendly culture. It's chaotic. I like that. Even the smells, the food, I don't know. There's something that's like really organic and just gritty about life there. And I love it. So anyway, what about you?
I do want to highlight you love to live in the chaos, because Kampala, that is definitely a word for it. But it is very beautiful. So
but you learn to work within the chaos, right? I mean, like,
true.
As an example, traffic is known to be just the worst. I mean, truly.
Yeah.
Getting stuck in a traffic jam, it's unexpected and it's just horrible. But the longer I lived there, the more I knew what times of day to not go out, or
True.
if I went out, I would only get on a motorcycle taxi rather than take my car, because it just, you can hop on the sidewalk and weave through, whatever. Anyway, it's just you learn to work through, the place that you live. So.
It's true.
Anyway.
I guess it's like beautiful chaos.
Yes.
Is how, yeah, for sure. I agree with that. Okay, for me, so similar to you, I'm not a Texan. I'm a proud Midwestern. I'm originally from Iowa, but majority of my life, I have been in Texas, Central Texas. We moved around a lot, but I would say actually Houston, but probably my first time moving here in 2012. I was just on fire for Jesus and just found this freedom that I've never felt before. And I lived with 2 of my best friends. So we lived in an apartment in the Heights, of course, great location. But it was a 2-bedroom apartment, and my bed was in the living room, and they both had bedrooms. Talk about cheap rent.
Yeah, hopefully you were paying less than them.
Yes. Actually, it wasn't. We all divided it.
What? Okay.
But
Did you get a closet?
I didn't.
Okay. Sounds like you got had.
But it was such a fun time. I mean, the $300 rent, you can't really complain of that one. And then definitely the other place for sure, hands down, is Tanj, South Sudan. I moved there in 2015 and absolutely loved it. I know a lot of missionaries or expats go overseas, and it's really, really hard. And there are hard things about it, but oh man, I just absolutely loved it. So similar to you about the beautiful chaos. Yeah, South Sudan, how I describe it is just joy and sorrow hand in hand. It is just so, so beautiful. I love simple living. I love that I didn't have distractions. I walked with Jesus every day. It was just and my teammates, like, we just had so much fun. And learning a language and working with the Dinka. I mean, it's just, you make fun of each other, you laugh a lot. Like, it's just, It's so fun. I would absolutely still be there today if the Lord would let me, but I trust His sovereignty that He
That's
has
right.
me here.
Yeah.
Uh,
I remember those days. I spent a lot of time with you and Tony. It was fun.
yes. Oh, so fun. It's fun to look back on pictures for sure. So this is a good way to segue into what we're going to talk about today, and we are going to talk about why water. I know me and you both are very passionate about it, so I'm excited for today's conversation. But yeah, would love to hear what you want to share. Just why does every village, really believe in water?
Yeah, I wanted to start just by telling kind of a story of a South Sudanese, and it's really not a specific person because it's almost every person in South Sudan. This is a really a global issue in South Sudan. It's the world's least developed nation, and because of that, you know, only 5% of the population has access to electricity, which means you can imagine nobody has access to running water. Nobody, and so it's the areas we're working, it's all manual hand pumps that people are able to get their water, but in so many places they don't have access to that, and so many people are getting water every single day from either a hand dug well or from a river or from a pond. I mean, and these are not clean water sources at all. I've seen it so many times, people that are dipping a bucket into, a filthy water source, and it just breaks your heart when you see it, for sure. But the one that's really unique that, as Americans, it's hard for us to sometimes picture is these hand dug wells. And they can be a variety of ones, but oftentimes they're just simple little hand dug wells that are pretty shallow, just to collect water. Because the Nile River runs right through South Sudan, there's water everywhere. South Sudan has tons of water. It's just under the surface. Mm-hmm. It's just how to access that. And so you don't have to dig very far in most places to get water. I mean, sometimes as shallow as 15 feet and you're hitting water. So the most water wells, though, are normally set around 60 to 120 feet, and that ensures that it's clean, safe water. Mm-hmm. But these hand dug wells are typically, maybe they are 15 feet or 30 feet down, maybe 40 feet down, and they're able to get a simple aquifer, or maybe it's collecting rainwater in the rainy season. Mm-hmm. But animals are going there, and they're we talked about poop in our first episode. I'll talk about it again. I mean, they're pooping in that source, but this is all the people have, and they're using it for drinking, of course, but they're using it for cooking. They're using it for washing clothes. Mm-hmm. I mean, bathing, everything. And so that's a huge issue. And then also, it's not just how dirty the water is that people are accessing, but it's how far away it is oftentimes. Mm-hmm. South Sudan is a very, fertile environment in the rainy season, but it's very arid in the dry season. And so, there's people that are walking, ladies that are walking, it's quite common, 2 hours, 3 hours a day. The other issue is because there's not enough water wells. What happens so often is women get to a water well and they're having to wait in line mm-hmm. to pump for an hour or two. And what happens? They're tired, they're hungry, and they're away from their kids at home, all these issues. And so oftentimes they get into fights. Mm-hmm. And so there's social issues that relate to the lack of access to safe water. So I could go on and on. You've lived it, Tiana, mm-hmm. That's the situation for every South Sudanese. We are, working on kind of our strategic vision for the future, but we did an estimate for the nation. The UN recommends one water well for every 250 people in ideal circumstances. In crisis situations, they recommend one well for every 400 people. Well, we did a calculation based on the number of water wells that exist in South Sudan, and they need over 10,000 more new water wells today mm-hmm. just to get to the UN's basic standard of 400.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. There's just not enough water. And then the big issue is that's new wells. Then the big issue is even when you have a water well, there's almost never a maintenance plan at all. Mm-hmm. And so, you might get a big NGO, a non-governmental organization that gets a grant for $30 million to go drill wells in South Sudan, and they'll come in and drill 100 wells or more, and then they leave. And the communities don't have the spare parts, the knowledge, the system in place to maintain those wells. And so they might last for 9 months, they might last for a year and a half, but these are mechanical parts and they break.
Mm-hmm.
And when they break, there's no solution. And so I can't tell you the number of water wells that I've passed in my time in South Sudan that are broken. And it's just, that's the common thing. We did a water assessment 4 years ago, and in our assessment, 50% of wells were broken at that moment, and then another between 15 to 20% were not functioning properly, and means they were on the way to being broken. So you're talking about 60 to 70% of wells at any given time in South Sudan are probably on their way to being broken or already broken. It's a huge, huge issue. And so with all that in mind, that's why water, because it is the single biggest need that drives everything in life. And then the tentacles of the impact go outside of just, we talked about the social impact with women. We talked about the health impact, of course, the time impact. And what does time do? Well, it robs girls, because girls are the ones who have to get the water, robs them of the access to education because they just can't go to school. In fact, parents, typically, the cultural mindset is so many parents are against sending their daughters to school because of all the responsibilities they have at home. Those, they need water more than they need an education. And so they don't have that freedom. So they might send their boys to school, but by the time a girl gets to be 6, 8, 10 years old, they're done fully, because they have too many other responsibilities, and accessing water is the biggest one. And so, it's just, it's a burning issue in this nation that needs to be solved, but it can't be solved with Western methods, just coming in and just finding short-term solutions, drilling wells and then walking away and saying we've solved the problem. That's not it at all. So every village drilled a bunch of wells for a number of years, but in 2018, we started looking at ourselves in the mirror and realizing, you know what? We're just contributing to a bigger issue. We're poking holes in the ground that don't have any maintenance plan. And so we paused our drilling program at that point, and we said, we've got to find a way to help solve this problem. And so we looked at the overall water system and identified 3 key gaps. First was access to spare parts. There's no supply chain in South Sudan. There's only about 200 miles of paved road in the whole nation. So there's just no commodities coming in and out. And so access to spare parts was a huge issue. We knew we needed to start spare parts stores, basically, and bring in a supply chain of parts. Second big gap was access to trained and qualified pump mechanics, people that know how to repair a well when it breaks. And thankfully, I've seen that number grow since I've been working in South Sudan, but it's still, there's just not enough. And so we realized, okay, we're going to need to come in and provide training and certification for pump mechanics. But then even when you have spare parts, even if you have pump mechanics, the biggest issue really that keeps the system from functioning at all is when a well breaks, the community doesn't know who to call, who they can trust, where they can go, and so the well just stays broken. The women aren't empowered with any decision-making in that, so they just start walking and they go to another well. And so what we realized, the third biggest gap that's really kind of the glue to keep it all together, is community contracts, agreements with communities for them to understand, oh, when my well breaks, it's covered by this plan. I can call this pump mechanic and tell them, hey, my well's broken. They can come with the spare parts and fix my well. And so that's what we do. It's called our Sustainable Water Cooperative. And we go around to communities and sign these service agreements with them. They pay it for an annual contract. It's about 50 cents per household per month is what we price it on. And they, we read that contract to them. Again, many of them can't read themselves, but we'll read it out loud and say, here's what we'll provide. Here's what you need to provide. And we make sure that it's a partnership with communities. And then we take one of those pump mechanics that we've trained and certified, and we assign them to that community to do monthly check-ins. And so every month they're visiting that water well, and they're doing a stroke test. So they'll pump, and basically if water comes within the first 10 strokes, then we deem that as fully operational. If it's more than 10 strokes, then we know, hey, there's probably a leak in there, or there's something that needs some type of maintenance. And so then they'll come back to our spare parts stores, and then we'll drive out there. Transportation's a huge issue, so on our trucks, we'll drive out there with the pump mechanics and oversee the repairs. And the pump mechanics get paid from that work. The communities get a working water well. And then, the last thing that it was so important for us to identify was any provision of water long-term in any country is going to be, the government's going to be involved at some level. And we realized we can't just work around the government here. We need to involve the government in this process. And so we decided to self-tax. So we we went to the government and shared the vision of this program, and we said we're going to put aside 5% of every water well repair job, and we'll tax ourselves and give that to you to support us. But we need you to provide stability and support for this area to make sure that we are able to do our work. And that's provided a great partnership with the local government as well. And so they're big advocates of it, not competitors. The pump mechanics love it. The communities love it. I mean, it's just a well-oiled machine. It's really beautiful. And so as we've gotten that underway, now we're really excited. We just bought our own drilling rig, and we're going to be starting doing our own drilling again. So we're reintroducing drilling, but there's going to be in communities that have already signed a service agreement with us. Mm-hmm. So we know that we're making sure that the entire life cycle of a well, from drilling all the way through, the long-term maintenance, is taken care of before it even goes into the ground. And so that's really exciting. So, just imagine, though, going back to that story of, the impact that a water well in your community can have. It's going to impact church, as we talked about in the last episode. It's going to impact schooling. It's going to impact health. It's going to impact your social relationships, your cleanliness, your hygiene. All those things are so impacted, but more than maybe almost any of that is just the mindset shift that comes with a well recognizing, oh, we can do something about this. We're empowered to take care of ourselves. We can pay for it. We can, hire somebody out who has the knowledge and the parts and the tools needed to do the job. I mean, that's dignity building. That's nation building, right? And so I don't know. I love talking about water. It's a really, really cool thing. And the last thing I'll say is that, our vision is for us to reach local sustainability. We really believe that communities can take on the full ownership of their well maintenance in the years to come. And so, this year we're just, recently into this water well maintenance program, and yet we're already at 37% of all repair costs are being covered by the South Sudanese. And that number is just going to keep growing. And it's really exciting to see. We believe that in the years to come, we're going to see 100% of water well costs covered by South Sudanese. And they're going to have the know-how. They're going to have the financial means to do it. And that's a really, really awesome thing. So
I love it. I did have some questions for you. One, where do spare parts come from? Where do we order them from?
Yeah, so the model of the water well pump that's in South Sudan is called the India Mark II. So it's originally comes from India, and we are able to get small shipments of spare parts from a supplier in the capital city of Juba, or you could go out to Kampala, Uganda, and get some. But when we do large shipping containers of parts, we actually order it directly from India because we found that's the highest quality, and we want to make sure we're getting good parts into South Sudan. And so it normally takes about 2 months to make that purchase and then get them shipped over to the coast of Kenya and then trucked from there into South Sudan. So it takes some time, but it's pretty cool to get it from there.
That's amazing. And then another question too is, so for this drilling rig, like what, compared to what we did before, where we would contract out a company and everything like that, how do you see this really changing and shifting our work and even financially for every village?
Yeah, we are really expecting the cost per well to come down, which is exciting, of course. Also, it just gives us a lot more operational flexibility. We're going to be able to be fully ownership of the site selection process. Every village has such an incredible reputation and relationships in communities because of our radio work and because of our work with the pastors and churches. Now, constantly we're getting feedback. There's this feedback loop from pastors of where there's need. And so we're going to be able to respond with a lot more, we'll be more nimble. We'll be able to respond more quickly with our own rig and our own crew doing that. So we're really excited about that. And then again, I'm just really excited about kind of full service provision all the way from drilling, which is so necessary to ongoing maintenance. And we're really looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm. One of our, I think, key pillars that every village really believes in is empowering the South Sudanese, and I love that. So even the pump mechanics, like these are South Sudanese men that we are training. We're sending them to get trained, so that they not only, dream world, maybe if the Lord would keep them, staying with every village, but they actually have this skill that they could actually go on and work somewhere else or work with another, nonprofit or even the government. And also something else I really valued with what you shared about with us, paying taxes to the government. I love that because I think it's really easy for us to kind of, or even just an organization to go in and say, well, I'm giving this to you. Like, we shouldn't have to pay anything. We're helping your people, but it's out of respect. It's out of honoring the culture, and the people that, yes, we want to help, but we also want to respect and give them dignity for that. This is their nation. This isn't ours. So I really love that.
Yeah, I love that too. And it's just the right way to do it. If it's short-term thinking if you don't involve the government. And so, there's obviously they're going to be big players long term. You're always going to be around. And so you might as well start with a good foundation. And so, yeah, I mean, it's really tremendous. And one of the things I love when I go, when I do go to South Sudan, sometimes I'll go and visit some of these communities that are getting their wells repaired. I'm not doing any of the work, but I just go to document it, shoot videos to donors or whatever. But I love it because it's all South Sudanese, 100% that are running the show and doing the work. And then I get reports, on a regular basis from South Sudan with pictures of these well repairs and hundreds of wells being repaired, and it's all South Sudanese. And that's just a beautiful thing. That is the fulfillment of our vision for sure.
That's so good. I know when I lived there, our staff, they would come to us and they would ask us for medicine because they have a headache. And we would tell them, we're like, drink a cup of water, like go to the water well here, get a cup of water, and then come back to me. And then they would come and they're like, oh, my headache's gone. And we're like, yeah, it's because you're dehydrated. That is why you have a headache. It then became a joke every time that they would be like, oh, I have a headache. They were like, yes, I'm drinking a cup of water. But it is true. I mean, even on the, on the health side of it, when I would go to the government hospital and people would be connected to IVs because they were so dehydrated. So imagine being so dehydrated that then you get an illness on top of that. Because what happens, what are we told here in America when you're sick? You need to drink fluids and you need to rest. Those are the top two things. Yeah. And in South Sudan, if you don't have water to actually stay hydrated when you're already dehydrated, and let's say you get bilharzia or, anything that diarrhea, like you're losing so much that you already don't have. So I know firsthand, really seeing the value and just the importance of not only just giving them water, but also giving them the education that this is what your body truly needs. So I love that we also can come in that way too, to help out the locals there too.
Yeah, you're so right. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm. I did actually, I think it was like a few weeks ago, they were doing water construction up the street from our house, and the water was out, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I have to shower, I need to get ready, what are we gonna do? And I live probably like 20 minutes away from you, but I was like, okay, telling my husband, I'm like, well, Daniel, like we're gonna have to go over to Andrew and Shayna's house and shower and get ready. And so even just thinking of that, like how much not having water impacts me here, like my time, and just the accessibility of turning on a faucet to wash my hands or to go to the restroom or to get a glass of water or to cook if I need to do pasta. And just to see like when that's taken away, what happens? Like we kind of go in panic mode, and we then tend to go to the farthest place instead of just going to my neighbor, which this is a good lesson. I need to get to know my neighbors a little more. But what I thought of is, I need to go over to Andrew's house, Andrew and Shayna's, to get water. And so it was a good, I think, reminder of even just in South Sudan how the women they just have to go to the next one, which isn't close by any means. It's pretty far, but that's just what they have to do. So I'm thankful that this is where every village comes in the gap, and we are really trying to help a need that's there. But again, it's tied to the church. It's tied to the Lord. And again, God provided the water. It's there. We just get to help give them access to it.
Yep. That's great. Thank you so much for talking about it. I love it.
Yeah, I know. It's so good. Well, thanks so much for sharing. And we're definitely looking forward to the next episode as we answer the question, why radio? So we will be diving into radio, which is very exciting. So thank you so much, and we will talk to you then.